Good afternoon to you. Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane Pro and HD video blog for Friday, the 29th of September, 2017. Take a look at what Jose and Maria and even Irma have done, chiseling away the upper ocean heat content through here. You can see this cold wake left behind. All of this area eroded away in terms of the upper ocean heat content values because the hurricanes literally suck the heat out of the ocean, whip it up, and convert it into energy and condensation, which we see as rain and violent wind and convection, and that is literally pulled right up out of the ocean, and it leaves behind this shadow, if you will, and you can see that very clearly here from Irma and Jose and then Maria. Fascinating on one hand, but obviously very destructive. It's a lot better if they'll just do that kind of like this and turn out to sea, avoiding all land. Unfortunately, we don't always get what we hope for. The rest of the Atlantic basin is still very warm in terms of upper ocean heat content values for the most part, especially over here in the Caribbean Sea, and that will be the focus of our attention over the next few weeks as we transition out of the traditional Cape Verde season, where we have a lot of activity out here that ends up over in this area. Now we'll focus on mainly the Western Caribbean and the Southwest Atlantic Basin and the Gulf of Mexico over the coming weeks. It's interesting, too, that we have this La Nina look, the colder than normal anomalies here, these blue colors indicating colder anomalies compared to the average. And in the Atlantic Basin, we still have a very warm main development region and a very warm Caribbean through Gulf of Mexico. And even here, too, you can see the shadow left behind from mainly Jose and Maria, but a little bit over here too from Irma, carving away that, well, it's made it so that the water temperatures are colder, literally removing the heat out of the oceans and transferring it into the atmosphere and dissipating that heat. What an interesting process, but it's too bad that it has ended up to be also very tragic and very damaging and destructive and disruptive to people who have been impacted from Harvey all the way through the most recent here with Maria. So do we have anything to worry about over the coming days? I wouldn't say worry. Obviously we have Lee and Maria here both heading out into the North Atlantic. These will no longer be an issue, except that maybe they could bring some rain and gusty winds and overall stormy conditions to parts of Northwest Europe and maybe the British Isles in the coming days. We'll have to see. So if you have interest over there, keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, down here in the Florida Straits off the Keys here, a broad area, it's a trough of low pressure, so it's kind of a linear shape instead of round, interacting with an upper level low. Environmental conditions down there are only marginally favorable, and so the probability of development is only 40%. And then a very low probability for this system, a tropical wave moving through the Northeast Caribbean Sea. Pressures are not falling, and if we look at the satellite picture, this is the area over Florida. Probably going to produce some kind of a low over here, and strong high pressure to the north is going to drive easterly winds across this region. So it's going to be kind of stormy and kind of wet and just generally unsettled, but nothing concentrated and powerful to have to worry about in terms of high wind or any storm surge. But that being said, a very stiff easterly flow is going to set up over the next several days, and that will drive the ocean right onto the shore there, increasing the surf, and you'll have rough surf conditions, rip current problems, maybe even some overwash in some of the more vulnerable areas. So just something to keep in mind, all right? Looking at the GFS model from this morning's run, the 12Z run, over the next week, you can see this energy that comes up really doesn't do much. Part of it splits off, part of it heads over back to the west, and another piece heads over here. It's all kind of discombobulated, and that's good to see. We're not seeing any one area that tries to get concentrated, although something in the extreme southeast Pacific, maybe towards days 6 and 7, tries to do so, but that's far enough out into time that we don't have to worry about it too much. But you notice up here in Florida, really not much to worry about in terms of any solidified, consolidated area of low pressure forming. But at the end of the run here, and I'll scroll up and we'll go to the last frame, we do have to watch and see how this very large area of unsettled weather, what we call a Central American gyre, G-Y-R-E, just a very large, broad area of low pressure and general counterclockwise turning in the atmosphere. Sometimes these pieces of energy will come out and they will try to consolidate, and then they can break off and become a tropical cyclone and maybe move up towards Florida. Sometimes they cut across the Bahamas, and sometimes they can end up in the Gulf of Mexico. You just never know. That time period where we watch for these things is approaching as we get into October. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Climatologically speaking, this area becomes favored as we get into October. So the hurricane season definitely not over yet. All right, well, that'll be it from me for today. I appreciate, as always, that you tune into these and hopefully you learn something from it and they are informative. I'll be back throughout the weekend, of course, providing some updates. I am going to be heading out to Florida, to South Florida, on Sunday to pick up equipment that was left out for Hurricane Irma. It's now time to go retrieve that equipment and see what we got. In some of the cases, some weather data that could be very important. I'll be doing that on Sunday and Monday and into Tuesday, but all along the way, I'll bring the laptop and we'll make sure we stay up to date on what's happening. And you can follow along right in Hurricane Pro and HD. Very convenient. Have a great weekend as it gets here. Enjoy it, and I'll be talking to you throughout it. I am Mark Sept for HurricaneTrack.com, my website, of course, and for Hurricane Pro and HD. I'll talk to you again over the weekend.